So the year is 2019 and Dragon Quest XI comes out. I've never played a Dragon Quest game before then, so I grabbed it with no expectations. 80 hours later, I finished that game as a changed man. I mean, by the time I'd seen both endings, this wasn't just a game that I finished, it was something that I genuinely haven't stopped thinking about since. Because this isn't just a good JRPG, it's a game that feels almost completely detached from modern trends, and that's why I think it works so well. Dragon Quest XI does not chase innovation for the sake of innovation. It doesn't constantly surprise you with fancy gameplay mechanics or a fancy structure or whatever else. It just focuses on what Dragon Quest has always done best. A classic story, a memorable world, and kind of a slower pace that allows you to live in that world from start to finish. And that's what I want to talk about today. Because even all these years later, I still think about this game and why exactly it stuck with me the way that it did. So before we get to that, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, leave your thoughts down below. I would love to know your thoughts on Dragon Quest XI, and I've been dying to make a Dragon Quest XI video for so long, so I'm excited to kind of revisit that with you guys and just tell you all why I love this game so much, and not only that, why this game had such a profound impact on me. Let's go. So at first, Dragon Quest XI feels exactly how you expect a JRPG to feel, especially for me coming from many other JRPG series to this one for the first time. You start in a small village, typical small beginning JRPG sized village, and you find out that you're different than the rest of the people that you know. Within the first few hours, you're already stepping into that familiar kind of chosen one role. Yes, it's very familiar, almost to the point where you feel like you've played this exact opening before. And arguably, yes, it is similar to the other games in the series to me now, especially after playing most of what the series has had to offer. But again, this was my first one. And for a while, the game leans into that until you meet the king for the first time. Instead of being welcomed as a hero or a savior, you're branded as a threat. And that moment alone told me this game wasn't going to play things completely straight. But even with that twist, the overall structure still felt pretty traditional early on. But what makes this game work is how confident it feels in doing that. I mean, that's classic Dragon Quest formula. This game doesn't rush anything, like at all. You'll know that if you've played the entire game, which is super long, it's very much a game that lets you live in that world and slowly builds the foundation as you go, letting you understand everything and how it all fits together. And because of that, once things do start to shift, it actually means something to you if you are emotionally invested, like I was. Now, by the time you move into what I'd consider the second act, after the world itself changes and everything you thought you were working toward gets flipped, and then the tone becomes a lot more serious, that's the part where the game really solidified its hook in me. Without getting too specific, just in case you haven't played the game yet or you just want to revisit with a somewhat fresh perspective, there is a clear turning point where the feeling of adventure you initially had is replaced with something a little bit more uncertain. The world feels different, and it's no longer just about fulfilling that legendary hero or the luminary role. That shift within the story really made everything feel more meaningful. And again, that's really where everything just started to really stick for me. And then you reach what feels like the ending, or what should have been, I guess, the original ending, but it wasn't. The story wraps up in a way that feels kind of complete and satisfying, and honestly, yes, you could have walked away here and been completely happy with that experience, but then there's more. It keeps going. I mean, I usually stop playing once I hit credits, but I figured, you know what, let's walk around a little bit more, and then suddenly more story started happening, and then it hit me. There's a lot of unsolved threads, and the game just keeps getting better from here. And then the final act, which leads into the true ending, and for some of you, you could say this easily is the most divisive part of the game. Structurally, yes, it's really interesting. Gives you more time in the world, more context with some things and some characters, and opportunities to explore ideas that the earlier acts really set up. It is very ambitious, and in terms of content, it's incredibly generous with the amount of stuff that is beyond that initial ending. But in order to experience that final act, the game asks you to engage with the story in a way that you could say kind of undercuts what made that earlier ending work so well. Moments that felt final are no longer final, and the weight of certain events start to shift depending on how you look at it. And I think that push and pull between giving the player more and trying to preserve the impact of that first ending is one of the most interesting things about Dragon Quest XI. I mean, it's certainly not the most perfect JRPG, it doesn't have the most perfect structure, but I really love what this game offers you in terms of story and how you can digest it. It's one of the reasons why, yes, I haven't stopped thinking about it. Now, Dragon Quest XI is one of the clearest examples of how strong gameplay fundamentals can carry an entire experience. On paper, there's really nothing here that feels particularly new for many returning fans. Again, having been my first Dragon Quest game all the way back in 2019, this was all strange, but also familiar at the same time, Turn-based combat, party management, skill trees, equipment upgrades, it's all stuff that longtime JRPG fans will be at home with. But the difference is in how refined everything feels. It's a game that I actually want to revisit now because I've played so much Dragon Quest at this point, so it'll be interesting to see how it kind of innovates on that classic style. The combat system in particular is built around consistency. You always understand what your options are, what your abilities do, and how enemies behave in relation to everything. And there's honestly very little friction between you and the mechanics, which makes the game super easy to settle into even over longer play sessions. Overall, I mean, it's really well balanced and engaging enough to keep you going through all the twists and the turns of the story. And over the course of those 80 plus hours that at least I put into the game, it just started to feel like comfort food, like I knew exactly what I was getting into, and it really didn't feel like much of a chore to play or even just grind at all. You're not constantly relearning things or adopting to sudden shifts. You're building on what you already know and getting better at it. New abilities, new party members can change how you approach fights, and better equipment obviously gives you a steady sense of progression, and at some point you can even just turn your brain off and grind, which is what I did. And there's something to be said how well paced this whole game has held in terms of like game progression, gameplay mechanic progression. You're always working towards something, whether it's a new skill, new equipment, or experimenting with different party setups to take on difficult boss battles or just difficult battles in general. It's the fact that it keeps you kind of playing even when the story feels like it slows down a little bit. And considering that the gameplay is the core of the game, it's really special. Now that said, sometimes the simplicity can also work against it. There are definitely moments, particularly in later portions of the game, where combat starts to feel a bit too samey, whether you're fighting the same enemy types or revisiting areas. I mean, it never becomes bad really, but it can start to feel stretched across the game's length. And if you spend a lot of time grinding metal slimes to try and get leveled up enough to tackle the final boss comfortably, yeah, you might be a little bit bored. But hey, just chuck on a podcast or a YouTube video and just enjoy something while you do something else. But even with those minor nitpicks, I'd argue that it holds up remarkably well over the course of the entire game. I mean, it's certainly not the flashiest thing in the world, but its strength is that it's incredibly consistent, and it works. And over time, that approach becomes one of its biggest strengths for me. Now, in my opinion, Dragon Quest XI really hits hard when it ties some of the themes of the game into some of the experiences that you have, whether it be specific character moments or story beats. So here's just a few themes that I really just found, are still kind of rolling around in my brain all these years later. And yes, there are spoilers here, just so you know. So one of the biggest themes that runs through Dragon Quest XI is found family. So again, at the start of your journey, everything feels typical. You're the luminary, destined to save the world. But it doesn't take long before the people around you start to matter just as much as that role. There's Erek, Rab, Serena, Veronica, Sylvando. They're not just your typical party members. They are really your support system in the best way. What I like is that this is not something forced. These characters have time to breathe throughout the entire game. They've got their own stuff happening that's kind of parallel to the hero's journey. And by the time you dig a lot deeper into the story, it genuinely feels like you're traveling with people who really rely on each other and depend on each other. And that's what makes some of the smaller moments hit just as impactful as the bigger ones, whether it be funny or emotional. Now let's talk about legacy. The Luminary is not just some random chosen one. You're part of a lineage that stretches back long before the events of the game, and Rab, being your grandfather, adds another personal layer to this whole story in a way that I really seriously did not expect. Though after a while I kind of did suspect something, and it turns something that just could have felt mythical, like, you're just part of this legendary bloodline, you have no connections to anybody, into something more grounded. You're already traveling with, your grandfather. You're inheriting history here. It's really cool. And throughout the game as a Luminary, you'll see this consistent tension between who you are as a person and who you're supposed to be. And then there's the forging of that mythical sword of light. On paper, yes, this is the kind of thing that you expect to have as an objective in a JRPG. Gather some in-game stuff, create the legendary weapon, defeat the big bad guy. But I think Dragon Quest XI really gives that process some more weight than you think. It's not just a checklist thing, though yes, some of it might feel a little bit chore-ish, but it really feels like a culmination of everything you've been working toward up to that point. And by the time you actually forge it, I think it serves as a great representation of your journey up to that point. It almost feels tangible. Now, I also want to talk about Veronica's story, because this is one of the moments that I think really shocked me and just kind of... let's talk about it. This is one of the most impactful moments of the game to me. The way that her arc plays out in the second act adds a real sense of loss that lingers throughout the game. It's one of those moments that genuinely changes the tone, and for a while, it feels like the game is willing to sit with that weight. And then you have the chance to reverse it. Definitely something that I did not see coming. Imagine if we could do that with Aerith in Final Fantasy VII. Maybe we will on the third part. Who knows? And that whole idea of rewriting what's already happened leads directly to the ending. There's the big reveal. The game positions 11 as taking place long before the Erek trilogy of Dragon Quest III, which is technically the first game in the series. Now, this is something that didn't really resonate with me at all. I was just like, cool, there's some flashback or whatever. But now I really understand the weight of what happened here. And it's, again, one of the reasons why I want to go back and play this game and really just experience and sit with that moment. Of course, I've played Dragon Quest 1 through 8 pretty much right now, and I've watched the YouTube cutscene, but I just want to experience that whole game and then finally get to that last little tidbit where it shows you, here's what happens after Dragon Quest 11, and there's a lot more weight to your actions, and pretty much serves as the first game in that timeline. So it's super interesting. So yes, there you go. There's a few moments that are a good example of the backbone of Dragon Quest 11's thematic strength. It doesn't always tell you these things, it shows you and allows you to emotionally bond with that story and the characters through their experiences. And that's why years later, yes, these themes are still resonating with me. Now, the characters of Dragon Quest XI are one of the reasons, probably if not the biggest reason, why I'm still thinking about this game. I mean, if you've played this game, chances are you might have a favorite, and I certainly do. Before I talk about my favorite, what stands out is how much time the game gives these characters to exist, just outside of their roles in supporting the hero. I mean, Erek is probably the clearest example of this. He starts off as a very familiar archetype, but as the game unfolds, there's a lot more depth than you initially expect. His backstory, his feelings, the way his arc ties into the broader narrative, all of that adds some serious weight to his presence in the party. And Sylvando, yes, Sylvando is my favorite. I mean, oh honey, I love that. Even my wife loved Sylvando. When we were playing the game, she would sit next to me, and yeah, he was so cool. And I even named my car after Sylvando because I got a brand new car around that time. And yeah, Sylvando the Ford Escape. I love it. It's really become a part of my life. On the surface, he's flamboyant, charming, comedic, yes, a bit of comic relief, but beneath that, he's incredibly self-aware and deeply caring. The game takes really great time to explore him in a wonderful way, and by the time, the game ends, his loyalty to the party is super emotional because you've seen him as more than just a colorful side character. I'd honestly argue that he was my favorite of the entire game, bar none. And then there's Rab. His presence is super grounding. He starts off as this wise mentor figure. He's got some of the most wonderful story beats, and the revelations about his relationship with the hero are genuinely impactful. Hendrik is another great character, possibly one of the most underrated characters of the game for me, but maybe for a different reason. He starts off as somebody who's very loyal to the king, to the point where he feels like more of an obstacle than anything else, and maybe you even think he's a bad guy. But once the truth starts to come out in the tone of the story and the themes and all that stuff, you can see that he's got this gradual realization that everything he stood for was not as he thought. And by the time he joins the party, he's deliberately choosing to stand with the luminary, acting more like a shield than anything else. And it's, again, another arc that just really resonated with me. And he has some really funny moments in the game as well that completely caught me off guard. I mean, this moment right here is super funny.
Incredible! Issue 1 of the Ogler's Digest. And in mint condition.
But, I mean, it's not just those characters, which, to be honest, yes, were some of my favorites. The entire group feels super cohesive in a way that's almost kind of hard to explain. They don't really all develop at the same pace, and some characters do get more focused than others. These characters just help make this journey meaningful. And that's the key thing here, the journey. By the time you reach the end of the game, it genuinely feels like you, not the hero, but you have traveled with these characters. Even when the writing isn't overly complex, the emotional investment is there. And that investment carries through this entire experience, making Dragon Quest XI's cast one of the most memorable ensembles I've ever encountered in my 30 plus years of JRPGs. So after finishing this game all these years ago, I came away with a completely different perspective on this series. I mean, yes, this was my first one, but this is the one that really just kind of planted that seed and told me there's something special going on here, and I don't just have to be typecast as a Final Fantasy fanboy. And the magic of Dragon Quest XI isn't just about the gameplay or the story beats, it was really that emotional investment the game allowed me to have with all these characters and the overall journey. And I've now since worked my way through much of the series, 1 through 5, 7 reimagined, halfway through 8 right now. I still need to tackle 6, 9, and 10, if I can find the right English patch. But 11 will always remain special to me and likely probably forever be my #1 Dragon Quest game, unless something surprisingly overthrows that. So after 80 plus hours, 2 endings, and plenty of time to reflect afterwards, I understand why Dragon Quest XI has lasted as long as it has for me. It's not flashy, it's not overly complicated, but it's deeply confident in that classic Dragon Quest DNA, and wow, has it really left a mark on me. So thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Have you played Dragon Quest XI? I would love to know your thoughts. I feel like I haven't really had much time to talk about this game other than just little tidbits in some of my Dragon Quest videos, but you know, I'm super glad that I finally have a dedicated video to kind of complement my broader retrospective on Dragon Quest as I play through every game. So I would love to know your thoughts on today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on another video next week. And go play Dragon Quest XI, or play it again if you haven't already. Bye-bye.